Hey guys, it's Brian Myers here, Primitive Strength, and I'm going to go over single and double kettlebell deadlift. Just a quick instructional tutorial. As you know, most of us are doing our training from home now. I feel extremely blessed to be able to come up to my spot and still train up here and be able to help people that are at home. And so some of you have taken some equipment from the gym. Some of you have equipment at your house already. So this is just reinforcements for people that already know how to deadlift in here, and also for people that have no idea what they're doing. This will help you to get started. Okay, single kettlebell deadlift. So we always want to approach the bell and get right on top of the bell and have that thing cut the middle of the foot in half, okay? Just like with a bar, you've heard me say that before, if any of you have trained with me on the bar, that the bar cuts the middle of the foot in half. Same thing with the bell. I just treat the handle like it is the bar. So when I step up, about shoulder width with the heel slightly in, okay? We're not going straight on, heel slightly in, and I'm gonna step right on top of that bell where the handle cuts the middle of my foot in half. Okay, from there I'm going to hinge. It's a hinge, it's not a squat, so I'm going to find the creases of my hips. Then I'm going to chop my hips and send my glutes back. Okay, again, hinge, chop, use those hands to push your hips back to get into that hinge position. All right, some of the things that I'm looking for are vertical or near vertical shins when we get into that position. Okay. If they're not vertical, then I'm dropping into a squat. Now, they could be vertical and the hips could be too high, so we'll talk about that here in just a second. So, things that I'm looking for: shins at or near vertical. Shoulders are away from the ears. Hips are above the line of the knees in space, and shoulders are above the hips in space. Okay? So you can see I got knee, a little bit higher I got hip, a little bit higher I got shoulder. So that brings me back to that point. Here, where I've got hip and shoulder in alignment, hips are way too high, hips getting down close to the knees, way too low, okay? You're gonna have to find that position in your setup once you get set to where you feel about 50% in the front, 50% in the back as far as contraction goes, okay? Another thing, I wanna make sure that I'm leaving my spine neutral, so I'm going to practice with a dowel rod, PVC, broomstick, whatever you got. I'm going to put it up against my glutes, my upper back, and my head, and practice my hinge. That helps me keep that spine neutral, right? To where I'm not going into a hyperextension or flexion. Either way, I want to keep that neutral when I'm doing a hinge, i.e. deadlift, kettlebell swing. Right? Now you might not be looking straight down. I like most of my students to look out in front of them about 7 to 10 feet, or eyes on the horizon, okay? So you can have a little bit of extension in that neck, just not a ton. So again, approaching the bell, cut the foot in half, we're gonna hinge. We're going to go over and we're going to grab onto that handle, okay? From this point, I'm going to gently bend or pretend to bend the handle. That helps set my shoulders back away from my ears. I want a lot of space in between shoulders and ears, okay? So I'm going to grab on that handle with a nice firm grip. I'm not just going to loosely hook it. I'm going to grab onto it and act like I'm trying to bend that handle to set those shoulders back, okay? Now I'm in position to lift. All right, I'm gonna pull on the bell just a little bit before I do my first lift to find the wedge, all right, to find the strongest position in that move when I get down and grab onto the bell. So I'm gonna act like this thing is like 500 pounds or it's bolted into the floor. I'm gonna approach it, hinge, send those hips back, check my shins, at or near vertical, grab on with a nice grip, set the shoulders back, and then I'm going to pull on this bell just a little bit where I try not to get it to leave the ground. Okay, can I feel my midsection braced? Do I feel about 50% engagement on the quads and the hamstrings? Also, do I feel like I'm going to fall backwards if I let go? You should, right? If I'm set up and I'm way out in front and I let go and it feels like I'm going forward, what do you think is going to happen? The weight's going to swing forward, okay? We don't want that to happen. So, when we set up, so in that wedge, when I start to pull on that, I want to be sitting back into my hips and heels, right? So if I let go, it feels like I'm going to go back just a little bit, all right? So, position, get in position, check those shins, get those shoulders set, make sure you're wedged in between the weight and the floor. Do a little static pull to help you find that position. And then big breath in. Okay, you notice my breathing was only at the bottom. Take a big breath in, do your lift. Exhale when the weight hits the ground again. Take your time to rebreathe. I don't really like me or any of my students to mess with breathing while they're moving on deads, squats, bench press, military press, all that good stuff. Try to own that Valsalva maneuver, okay? So that's single kettlebell deadlift. I hope that covered most of the points. Yes, Roxanne, yes or no? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
So I hope that covered most of the points on the single, just to help you get started. For those of you training at home, everybody should be training. Doubles. Same thing. Obviously, I'm gonna have to step a little bit wider. I'm gonna turn this way. Obviously, I'm gonna have to step a little bit wider, but I don't wanna go straight sumo on these, okay? So I'm gonna have my feet right outside the bells, but still fairly close to them so I can still keep that hip width or shoulder width on the stance, okay? So difference here is I've got 2 bells instead of 1, so I'm really gonna have to pay attention to keeping those shoulders connected. So make sure the bells are lined up, cutting the feet in half, shins are at or near vertical. You won't be able to bend the handle on this, okay? You have to unshrug. So think shrug, unshrug, all right? We want to depress and not retract our shoulders. There's a big difference there. So if I'm down here and I shrug like, I don't know, I'm going to unshrug, right? Shrug, unshrug. Breath in, the bells right on top of the thighs. They're not gonna come to the outside. Okay, and that's a double kettlebell deadlift. You can do single arm, you can do suitcase. There's a lot of other stuff that you can do with that, but hopefully that is enough to get you started for those of you that are at home that want to work on your deadlifts with either single or double kettlebell. That should give you enough to get started. All right? Hope that helps, and we will see you soon. Thank you. Yo, one more thing I wanted to add to that. I forgot to talk about the grip. The abs and the glutes are the 3 neural drivers of tension, okay? So I did touch on the point of getting a nice firm grip on the bell and not just hooking it, okay? So we're not just gonna hook it on either one. We want a nice firm grip. Like I said, the 3 drivers, neural drivers of tension are your grip, your abs, and your glutes. So that leads me into the point that I forgot to touch on earlier. You should be practicing hard style plank, because at the top of a deadlift, I'm in a hard style plank, okay? If you have trained with me or trained in primitive strength, you should know what a hard style plank is. If not, look it up. It's a plank, but we add a lot of tension in, squeezing the fist, squeezing those abs tight, glutes, quads, pulling the elbows down towards the toes and toes up towards the elbows to sort of solidify that into one piece instead of separate links. We need the entire body to be engaged. And so when I stand up, immediately, when I lock into the wedge position of the deadlift, I'm already thinking tension. In the bottom of that deadlift or your starting position, you should be fairly uncomfortable. And then as soon as you start to move, you want to think glutes, okay? So you're squeezing them just like a hip bridge, lying on your back hip bridge. Starting to come up into extension, squeezing, and then when I get to the top of that deadlift, it's glutes, quads, abs, grip, lats. From the neck down, pretty much everything is engaged, okay? So make sure that you're doing some hard style planks first before you start deadlifting if you're not comfortable with that, creating that tension at the top. But you want to think when you stand up, you should be in a rigid plank at the top of your deadlift, okay? Just add that into the other stuff that you're practicing and go get after it.